Hey, welcome back to Innovate Africa. As you know, we focus on those innovative businesses that impact lives, businesses that also have a bit of traction. But these businesses impact lives on the African continent. Now, if we had to talk about purchasing properties in Africa, man, so many things can go wrong. But if you have the right information at your fingertips, you can make really smart decisions. In the past, only a handful of people had access to those details, but thanks to a company called Proply, Proply, they've now democratized access to really key information to make really clever property decisions. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce you to Wesley Roos. Wesley Roos is the founder of Proply. Great having you on the show, Wesley. So I think first and foremost, before we talk about your journey, I'm very keen to know what Proply is in essence. Like when you wake up in the morning, you've got a purpose with this business, right? What is that purpose?
Yeah, thanks, Kino. So I think right off the bat, the reason Proply exists is to bring transparency into a market that typically hasn't had it before. Yeah, just really bringing fairness and transparency back into property data and property transactions.
Because that's the most important thing, right? I mean, without proper information, you can't make informed decisions, and you could sink a whole lot of money into a very deep hole. But where did this all start for you? Let's talk about that founding journey. I know you're good with models, and this is the numbers type, of course. Let's talk a little bit about your skill set and how that transitioned into a technology business, a proptech business, as it is.
Yeah, cool. So I actually studied a property studies degree at Wits University, got my honors. Didn't actually touch property for quite a few years, but went and started building tech startups. Particularly back then, it was in edtech, and this was all the way back in 2015. And yeah, I ended up, building this business up, building a number of different tech businesses up, but only really went back into property in about 2021. And it started then just as a small property portfolio with myself and a friend. And we were just, we didn't really have, we were trying to de-risk our investments using sort of really solid financial analysis and not really putting down much in the form of deposits. Obviously, as you can understand, if you want to do it that way, you have to be pretty good at financial modeling. You have to be able to project everything. Make sure that you're going to be cash flow sort of break even or in a surplus, because that was one thing we wanted. We didn't want to be able to we didn't want to have to put money in on a monthly basis. And so going on that journey of just trying to fetch different data, talking to real estate agents, talking to Airbnb management companies, no one could really give us data that we were looking for to be able to de-risk our investments, de-risk the buying of these properties. And so being who I am, I put together a spreadsheet. I just went and started gathering data, as much data as I could. And essentially got to the point where I was able to pretty successfully forecast and model how a property would perform in our market, which is obviously right now a Cape Town, South Africa market. And so the more and more we were doing this, the more and more I had other people coming to me and asking for help in their property buying journey. And so really then it became almost like a service-based consulting business, but realized very quickly that wasn't scalable. And so realized that there was a need for the tech. Now, I'm not a technical founder. I've been involved in tech businesses for the last decade, but I've never been on the technical side. I've always been on business development, sales, or in more recent years, more on the product side and the building side. And so managed to do our first sort of 60,000 Rand in sales off of a spreadsheet, which obviously validated that there is a need for this. But then, as I said, we very quickly realized the need for tech. So ended up basically turning off the whole business, turning off the consulting business model, and we focused purely on trying to build out some tech to get this going.
So this is, I sort of bow down at your altar of brilliance when it comes to pivoting. trying to figure out how to get a solution off the ground, especially when it becomes rather challenging. I know for a fact, having spoken to you over the past couple of months and years, that you've struggled to find a technical founder. People are wanting the equity because that's what you could afford at the time, but they wouldn't really put the work in because they would concentrate on what brings in the money first. So you've had this love-hate relationship with finding a tech founder. What did you do next? So I love this part of your story, man. The fact that you decided to become a technical founder of your business when initially you didn't start out as one. So take us through that journey.
Yeah, it's amazing actually how much you can achieve just through being a little bit pissed off.
True.
With developers, because I just it felt like I was just getting taken for a ride over and over again. And for whatever reason, we couldn't find common ground with the developers that I was working with, either wanting too much equity or wanting too much capital up front, and I hadn't raised a very significant amount. And so at some point, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to see if I can learn to code. And worst case scenario, I acquire a skill over the next couple of years that maybe will be useful, down the line. It turns out that with where AI is today, you can actually get a hell of a lot done yourself. But basically what I did is I enrolled in a free online course through Harvard's online university. It's a very famous introduction to computer science called CS50. It's a 3-month course that I managed to push through quite quickly in about 6 weeks. I didn't even do the assignments. I asked AI to do the assignments for me. I asked ChatGPT to do the assignments for me, and they explicitly said, don't do that. But my logic was that I don't need to know how to code. I need to know how to achieve an outcome. I need to know how to piece code together. And so actually decided, cool, I'm actually making such great progress on this. I'm just going to keep going. And that was on the 3rd of June in 2024. By the 15th of September 2024, we'd launched our first platform, our first version, which was super embarrassing. I can't believe we actually launched with that. But they do say if you're not embarrassed by your first version, you've gone to market too late.
Yeah. So I think I want to extend this conversation to tips and tricks. So you mentioned this, was it CS50?
Yeah.
Sounds like a car anyway, but it's a Harvard course, Introduction to Computer Science. And then you use some other tools. If you don't mind sharing that with some founders out there who probably have the same pain point, putting it lightly, with developers, right? What are some of the tools that you've used to help you push through this?
You asking me to give away my secrets here, Kino?
I'll give away one too, so don't worry.
No, so initially it was just your LLMs, so ChatGPT, Claude, those were the two main ones right at the start. Obviously, just using those to then write code and then take that code and paste that into a visual editor like Visual Studio. But then I discovered at the end of last year, I discovered these agentic softwares like Replit and Bolt and Lovable, and I think there's one or two more like V0. And I'm just have like a very naturally curious nature and mentality as well. So I'm always tinkering with new things, playing and just trying to like understand what can do what. And so very quickly realized, cool, we can actually, Replit can get us really far. So a lot of property is actually built using Replit. We use something like called Vercel or V0 as a lot of our front end design work. It's just and you just learn as you go, like what is good at what. So Replit is very good at more back end infrastructural stuff. Vercel V0 is very good at front end sort of design. And then Bolt is very good at like mobile app development.
Yeah. I only recently stumbled on V0, by the way. And what I love about V0 is that it's that interactivity that you can actually build, like you say, front end, right? Whereas I've tried Replit. Replit, I must be honest, was slightly frustrating for me. But the combination of the two. And I think it's important for us to talk about this, Wesley, because you on your journey, no one's copying your business. It's important for us as founders to share some of our tips and tricks to help other people on this continent in particular get farther a lot quicker with less, because that's what we have to deal with on the African continent. It's not as if we've got funders crawling out of the walls throwing money at us when you mention AI. Okay, this is not the US, where I think that might still be the case. So, what problem are you currently solving with Proply, right? So, you initially started solving a problem that you had, which is one of the ways people start businesses. Others solve problems for people in the communities, etc., which is why Africa is such a beautiful space to innovate in. But where are you now with Proply? What are some of the biggest challenges that you are now hoping to solve with this business?
Yeah, so right off the bat, I would say access to data. Access to actionable data that will lead to good decision making.
Yeah.
Right now, if you want to get, as an end consumer, as a buyer or a seller of property or an investor in property, it's very difficult to go and get data specific to, let's say, title deed information. What has sold in the area? What have all the other properties in the area sold for? What is the price per square meter that they're selling for? You can obviously go and look at Property 24 and the big property portals to see what properties are selling for, what they're listed for. But there's a very big difference between what's listed and what's selling, and what they're actually selling at. It's typically like a 30% difference in some cases. And so there's no easy way for an end user to access that data other than going through, let's say, maybe an estate agent. And often those agents are quite protective over that information because it's their leverage in the deal. It's how they negotiate better deals. It's how they earn higher commissions. And so you're kind of at their whim as to what kind of data you can get. You can go and purchase these property reports, on some websites, but they're typically quite limited. And not easy to access, not always easy to get to. And so what Proply is doing is just taking all of that data that would typically be really hard to find, packaging it into one easy to access, very affordable report, and making that easily accessible to the public. It's literally one website. You log on, or you don't even have to log on. You just go to the website, you enter the address, you confirm one or two other details, you add your card details, and you click pay, and there's your report automatically generated and downloaded for you.
Access to what type of information do you get on this type of report, though? If you can break that down for us once again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the main sections are basically how you are priced in the market. So if you're a buyer looking to purchase a property and you want to know what offer you should make, is your offer too high or too low? We'll come in. This report will basically price counsel you on that. It will give you information like what are the 15 most similar properties in the area selling for, or listed for. What are the 15 most similar properties that have just sold for? So you can see, cool, there was a property 2 weeks ago that sold for X, and it's got this kind of similarity to your property. Therefore, your property is actually maybe overpriced, or what they're asking is way higher than that. So that's one of the sections, basically title deed data information. Another section is revenue performance data. So that would be things like Airbnb, nightly rate, and occupancy. If you're running this as an investment property, we have a few different OpenAI integrations whereby we're collecting things like or providing information like long-term rental information, again, as an investment property, but maybe a more stable investment property, not the short term. And if you want to just do the long-term rental. So we've got this very comprehensive revenue performance data. We've got data coming from TomTom around a traffic index. So we basically provide data around how bad the traffic is in an area. I mean, I don't know about you, but I plan my day around traffic. I hate the traffic so much.
Oh, yes.
If I'm looking to buy a property or just looking to rent, like I really take into consideration what the traffic is like in that area. And then what are some of the other ones we have as well? Yeah, it's mostly, we've got about 7 or 8 different data providers, mostly around AI and then mobility and title deed and Airbnb data, Airbnb revenue data.
Could you empower other entrepreneurs to start businesses off the back of your data?
Absolutely, yeah. So everything I've just spoken about is really just one of our product verticals. It's very much a B2C business, or B2C vertical, but we do have 2 other verticals. And those are basically API as a service businesses. I won't say the full acronym, But
Well, yeah, if you can explain that to us in English,
so
explain it to me as if I'm a 12-year-old. Some might argue that I am, but if you could explain that to me like a 12-year-old, right? API integrations. I can imagine some people will know what that is, but others might go, Let me get the dictionary quickly. But yeah.
So an API is basically it stands for Application Programming Interface, I think. And basically, it's a way for you to tap into another software's infrastructure, and for you to then pass data securely through those two different platforms. And so essentially, how I would explain it even more simply is, let's say you are an insurer, right? And you are providing quotes on new underwriting, on a monthly basis. Let's say you're doing, 10,000 of these a month.
Right.
You would then be looking for increased or better data on to assist in your underwriting process. We now have a service that goes and aggregates all of this property data, packages it neatly into a package, and passes that through this API to this insurer for them to then use that data in a sort of a meaningful way. It's not just the raw data, but it's actually packaged data with risk mitigation insights that is providing sort of actionable insights rather than raw data. They have the raw data. They have these insurers have like the actuaries that are already sort of internal in their businesses running their numbers, but they are asking for more sort of risk mitigation insights, not raw data. So what we'll do is go in through this risk index, this property risk index product, will provide them a comprehensive property risk assessment that just sort of integrates seamlessly into their systems. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it certainly does. It also raises another question, and that is creating bespoke solutions for big businesses, right? So you might have companies that reinsure and they do a risk mitigation and insurance. And now they're trying to, let's say, innovate around that to make sure that they get the best data to their customers as quickly as possible. Because some things you can't insure. And what these companies do is they say, well, you've got to put some money away in the kitty just in case something happens. You're basically protecting yourself. But then what they do is they reinsure that, right?
Sure.
But then in order to make sure that your capital is as safe as damn it, they put risk mitigating factors in place, all based on data. I mean, do you see Proply as a business that could almost start creating bespoke solutions for bigger companies that have more nuances and need for the very data that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the rate at which we are innovating certainly would position us in a way that we could be building these bespoke solutions for the proptech industry. We are very good at packaging data and dumbing it down for the end user, whether that is a real estate agent or a buyer or an investor or an actuary. Like, we are very good at taking raw data and packaging it in a way that is easy to use. And that can be done across so many different industries, and certainly so many like subcategories within proptech as well.
Sure.
So yeah, I want to be cautious to say that we would go down a route of like sort of offering services as like a dev house, like a proptech dev house, certainly with something we've thought about, but certainly we could build out, and we are kind of going in that direction, is building out these bespoke, sometimes white labeled tools for proptech tools based on data for different sort of entities in the industry.
Final question. Why should investors even take a look at you?
Well, we are a super high capital efficient business. So sort of, if you're looking quite simply from like a return on investment perspective, our expenses are pretty much forecast to stay pretty fixed or very linearly increase over the coming years, but our revenues are forecast to grow exponentially. So I mean, from a natural kind of ROI perspective, that's the one point. But on top of that, we're just solving an insane problem in the world. We're building an intelligence layer for property that is globally scalable, and it's a very exciting space to be in.
Wesley, I want to thank you very much for your time. I know one of your investors, I'm sure I can mention his name,
Sure.
Zach George. He's one of the most prolific seed to pre-Series A investors on the African continent, and he's put his own personal money behind this. And if Zach can do it, I know other people will. And that essentially is what Properly is all about. It's about democratization, access to information, because access to information gives you power as an African. It allows you to make clever decisions, which in turn impacts other people around you. And that concludes Innovate Africa for today. Once again, thank you very much to Wesley Roos, and I'll see you next week.